private practice in Nashville as well as an ordained minister. Now, Dr. Poe, before we end the show for today, let's give you an opportunity to highlight what you consider to be the most significant aspects of the inmate study that you and others carried on dealing with the Metropolitan Jail, and to perhaps give us some clues as to how we might be able to better affect what you think that we should try to accomplish.
One thing I want to emphasize at this point, Dr. Haney, is that all except one of the inmates that we evaluated had a significant degree or was suffering from a significant degree of self-hate. And that's very, very significant, because oftentimes people see persons who have a history of repetitive criminal behavior as willfully mean. All right? But what we discovered is that most of these men, 92%, were more victims of a traumatic environment, of a traumatic hostile environment, of a depriving environment, emotionally as well as spiritually. And so at a very early age, even in their childhood, they developed feelings of self-rejection. They developed an intense dislike for themselves. And as you might imagine, if I don't like myself, it's going to be very difficult for me to like anybody else.
Very good.
And so persons who suffer from self-hate, and many people in our correctional institutions, I'm convinced, based on our limited study, do have this problem of very low self-esteem, and some even extremely low self-esteem, and that adds up to self-hate. And so then their behavior then is destructive, not only towards others, but it's destructive towards themselves.
Well, should they be made aware that they lack this self-esteem, or what? I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean,
well, I think that to help the inmates see that would be to give a test that helps to identify whether or not the inmate is suffering from self-hate or not. So by showing it to him based on test results, then that would help him acknowledge what the problem is. Now, the other thing I want to highlight here is, based on our study of the inmates, we found that the source of their self-hate was primarily a lack of spiritual nurture and guidance in the home, a lack of parental concern, absent fathers from the home, okay? So I would say primarily their self-hate came from the outside, at least initially, but then after it developed, then they became antisocial, they became destructive, so they added to their self-hate, all right? Now I think I want to make a point here, and that is that if I mistreat someone enough, I'm liable to contribute to that person disliking themselves, whether that person is a child, adolescent, or an adult. There's another way I can arrive at not liking myself if I am abusive of other people, if I mistreat other people consistently, willfully, for pleasure, for self-gain, then I lower my self-esteem. Then I may end up with a problem of self-hate. So my point is that a lot of the increase in the violence that we see in our schools, our family life, and our community is a manifestation of self-hate. We've got a problem of self-hate in our society, and we need to take a close look at it. It is not just a psychological problem. It is not just a physical problem. It is not just a social problem. It is, I believe, more deeply a spiritual problem that's going to require primarily a spiritual solution. And so that's the point that I want to make, is that many of the men in lockup, and I would assume women too, have been damaged by their upbringing. They didn't handle their very low self-esteem well, so they became self-destructive and destructive of other people. They added to their very low self-esteem that was engendered by parental neglect, parental abuse in many cases, okay? So now what do we do with it? Just counseling is not enough. Just psychiatric medications is not enough. Just being confined is not enough. These people need the kind of spirituality-based counseling and psychotherapy and intervention that's going to help them alter their belief system. because many of them believe that they are no good, that they are worthless, that nobody cares about them, that they are inferior. Now, how do I alter that belief system? Well, I've got to offer that person a belief system that enables them to have faith in a power higher than themselves, and that power is God. I've got to offer them a lifestyle, all right, in which they can access that power, the Spirit of God, that changes beliefs, that changes attitudes, and that changes behavior.
And of course, Dr. Poe, as a minister, I think you would certainly agree with the statement that you hear so often in church, where people say that they felt that their religious experience simply changed their lives. And you're talking now about changed lives.
Yes.
And the church demonstrates that almost every Sunday. And if you can somehow get these young people in that environment, you see, they might not understand everything that goes on there, but if they can get it into that environment, that there is a change and a life-changing force there somewhere, then you're saying that we can do better in terms of meeting the problems of violence.
Yes, and I think that we need...
and of course,
okay.
Dr. Poe, let me, and I'm sorry we ran over time today, but let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.